G'day guys, Socket here. Today's viewer's question comes from New Bud Yawn, who I'm just going to shorten down to New. He says, is there a way to connect to the audio interface using GRU into your aftermarket head unit to play sweeps through that source, or is DSP the only option? Well, I think what New is asking is, so he's been watching the analog mic sweep tutorials where we connect the audio interface directly into the DSP, and New was asking, is there a way to actually connect the audio interface into the head unit? And I think there is a way to do it, but I'm not sure why you would want to do it that way. So I asked New about that, and what he said was he was concerned that the head unit and the DSP might give different frequency and EQ results. And to some respects that is right, and let me explain why. So one of my earlier videos was called a step-by-step guide to car audio tuning or something like that, and in that tutorial I talked about the signal change. So I just want to bring that up. There we go. So the signal change starts with a source, so you could be using streaming from your phone or your digital player, or it could be an Android head unit or a CD player, or it doesn't really matter. You've got some item that's creating a signal or a source of music, and that then goes to your DSP. The DSP will take that signal and it will add boost or EQ filters or change the timing or do something to manipulate that signal coming from the source or the music coming from the source, and it will send it to an amplifier to amplify the signal up to a level that can actually drive the speakers in and out and cause music. And then the speakers will play the music that will travel through the car environment, through the air, and bounce off the windscreen, and get absorbed by the console and the seats and whatever else, and eventually the signal will hit your ear and you will hear the music. That has been through a bunch of different bits of equipment. And I also talked about when we're doing car audio tuning, we're then using a microphone to pick up these sound waves and to create what we call a frequency response of your speakers, which we then apply EQ or we apply delay to get them to play together in time. And all of that manipulation and control occurs in the DSP. And in fact, once your car is in, your system is installed, the only thing that really affects the result coming out of the speakers that you hear is the source and the DSP. But most of it is in the DSP, and that's where you want to do most of the manipulation. So to talk about New's question, he's sort of saying, well, if I'm taking some measurements, can I send the signal to the source instead of the DSP? And the answer to that is, well, of course you can. You can send the signal will then go to the DSP, and it'll then go through your chain, and then you'll get a measurement. But you could also just as easily connect to the DSP, as I suggest in the tutorials, and do the same thing. But why would you want to connect to the head unit instead of the DSP? Well, the thing is that this signal that the DSP is manipulating, we assume that the signal is what we call clean. In other words, it's coming out of your source unit and it hasn't had any extra manipulations made to that signal. So for example, hasn't got any bass boost turned on, or any EQ presets or anything like that, or any type of manipulation of the music before it's getting to your DSP. So one of the reasons, so for example, if New is using an Android head unit in his car, and in that Android head unit there is some, let's say a pop preset or a jazz preset or something like that turned on, then the music will be manipulated by that EQ setting in his source, and it will go to the DSP with those extra settings already in it, and then you're trying to manipulate what is essentially an EQ'd or a boosted signal. And you're getting your music being affected by both your source and your DSP, and you really don't want to do that. So what you want to do is make sure that any of those bass boost, EQ settings, and all of that type of stuff is turned off in your source unit, and you're sending a flat, clean signal to your DSP, and you do all of your changes and manipulations in the DSP because that's exactly what they're built for. So how do you know whether you're getting a clean signal out of your DSP? Well, there is a tool if you're using the Audio-Tech Fisher, Helix, Brax or Match DSPs, those brands. There's a feature in the, for example, Helix DSP called an input signal analyzer that you can use to check to see whether your signal is flat. So let's have a quick look at that now. So where do we find this input signal analyzer? Well, let's open up the DSP tool. Now I'm using a Helix Ultras with a Bluetooth card, so I can start the demo. You don't need to have virtual processing on, it's whatever you use, but you can find this analyzer up here under the Input-Output tab, the I/O tab, and then in the upper right corner there's a little slidey icon here. This is the way I know how to get to it, and here is the Input Signal Analyzer tool. It has a basic and an advanced version, and you can use it to measure the input signal of your analog, and you should get a flat line, right? And if you don't, it means something's turned on in your device that is boosting a particular frequency. And if you've got everything turned off and it's still doing that, then this tool allows you to deal with whatever the cut and boost whatever your head unit happens to be doing to your signal, right? So that's the purpose of this tool. So as I said, you can measure your analog or your Bluetooth signal. It doesn't have a digital analysis tool for some reason. I'm not sure why. But if you are trying to analyze your digital signal, somehow you might be able to Bluetooth it and then use your hex, or you might be able to connect your digital player through to your head unit or something via an auxiliary cable or something, and you might be able to check it out via your analog settings instead. But yeah, it is what it is. So I'm not going to go through this in detail. I'm not an expert in using this, but I did make a tutorial in my Audio-Tech Fisher PC Tools software tutorial series. I'll put the link down in the comments below, along with a link to my step-by-step tuning guide tutorial that I mentioned earlier. But to answer New's question, it would be better to check your signal here. It would be better to turn off any manipulation that you've got in your head unit, and then check the head unit to make sure it's playing nice and flat. If it's not, to manipulate this EQ line to make sure that the signal is nice and flat, and that way you can connect to your DSP knowing that the frequency response and EQ that you're getting out of your speakers through your head unit or your DSP is exactly the same. So guys, I hope that was helpful. Once again, if you've got questions, just like New, feel free to throw them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. And if the email becomes too long, then I might end up doing a viewer's question just like the one today. Okay, thanks very much.